Hello, I'm in my bed again. I did the political compass test a few days ago, and that was very fun. Um, and so I want to do a few more of these. Somebody recommended to do 12 axes, and what's interesting about this is that, part of the criticism that I had of political compass was that it was two-dimensional. There was an x-axis and a y-axis. Well, this is 12 axes. So it's 12-dimensional, which gives you a much better idea of political ideology and how it works. So we have progress versus tradition, religious versus irreligious, bioconservative versus acceleration, which I have no idea what that means, federal versus unitary, democracy versus authority, security versus freedom, equality versus markets, planned versus laissez-faire. I think that's how you pronounce it. Globalist versus isolationist, assimilationist versus multiculturalist, militarist versus pacifist, nationalism versus internationalism. It's a little bit weird how they went from ist to ism at the end. I think they should have kept it consistent. But one thing that's interesting about this is that we have two different economic ones. We have equality versus markets and planned versus laissez-faire, which is interesting. I've always kind of felt, because I don't recall ever doing this one. I feel like I've done it. I must have done it at some point, but I don't remember it. I remember 9 axes. I guess this one is based on 9 axes. And so I guess 9 axes or 8 values had equality in markets, but they didn't have this planned versus laissez-faire distinction. And I'm interested in that because I've always thought that pitting equality against markets seemed like kind of like a weird approach, because it sort of implied that like you can't have equality with markets almost. Almost. Um, but I'm interested in seeing, I guess equality versus markets has more to do with kind of the essence of socialism, the essence of property and how it's understood, whereas planned versus laissez-faire is more about the role of a government body in the economy. So that's interesting. But without further ado, let's click here to start and see how good this test is. It's probably a lot better than Political Compass, because a lot of these tests were kind of made in response to Political Compass in order to improve on that one. Because it is just such a mediocre test. So let's do the long... Oh my god, 288 questions. Well, let's do it. Go big or go home. To chase progress at all costs is dangerous. So we have strongly agree, partially agree, neutral or unsure, partially disagree, and strongly disagree. So we have a lot of options, which is giving me decision anxiety, but I guess it's better than having the options, only the 4 options we had in the Political Compass test. But yeah, to chase progress at all costs is dangerous. I would say so, because I'm thinking about the Cultural Revolution in China and how for them progress meant destroying everything that wasn't communist. So I'll say agree. It's important that the government follows the majority opinion even if it is wrong. All right, so this is given some more interesting questions than the Political Compass test. Because I actually kind of agree. I disagree. Actually, I kind of disagree with this. I know that a lot of people feel like, oh, it should be, the majority opinion should be followed at all times because that's democratic. And that's a perfectly legitimate opinion to have. But I kind of just, I have this anti-populist streak in me. I have this elitist streak in me. This part of me that really doesn't trust normal people with making these kinds of decisions and would rather see these decisions be put in the hands of qualified experts. And so I have much more of a technocratic side to me than most people. And in some ways, I lean a little bit more technocratic than democratic, although I don't quite know what to do with that because I'm distrustful of power in general, which is kind of the best argument for democracy. I mean, that's the argument that Bertrand Russell gave for democracy. So I don't quite know what to do with my technocratic leanings. But yeah, I would disagree with this. I think if the majority is wrong, then don't do what the majority says just because they think that you should do it. No, you should do what's right. Without economic regulation, monopolies will dominate the entire market. I don't know. I don't know. I've heard differing theories about this. I think Adam Smith said that like that's kind of the flaw, the one big flaw of capitalism is that it can create monopolies and then that will damage competition all around. Um, but some people will make the claim that natural monopolies are very rare, and I think it's true that most monopolies have been state owned or state sanctioned at least. Um, but yeah, do I agree with this? Um, I'm unsure. Military action by our nation is often necessary to protect it. Um, I mean, yeah, why wouldn't it be? The elders in society know the best path for it. Usually not. Usually elders are stuck in an old way of doing things, and it's usually the younger generation, I think, who has a better idea of where things are going in society, and so can plan more for that rather than kind of thinking of everything in a really old-fashioned way. That being said, usually the elders are a lot wiser in their kind of approach to the practical situations that you encounter when trying to guide society. So I think there's a give and take. So I would partially disagree with this. I consider myself an atheist. Strongly agree. Government should not regulate the economy at all. I would strongly disagree. Countries that do not serve our interests should be toppled. Strongly disagree. I think countries are not they're not there to serve other countries' interests. They're there to serve their own interests, and we should respect every country's interests. Um, and we should learn to get along with each other. So I strongly disagree. Traditions are important. I agree. Um, I think humans love their traditions. They need their traditions. Traditions help us feel centered in life. I agree with that. I am a transhumanist. So I guess transhumanism is like, oh, I want to get cyborg arms that'll be 50 times stronger than my human arms, or something like that. Or I want to get a unicorn horn on my head. Uh, I don't really care. I guess I would partially agree because I think that there are certain things like if we could get artificial organs that we can replace easily, then we won't have a need for all these really expensive and difficult to procure organ transplants. So I think that there's definitely some use um, for that kind of thing. So I guess I'll agree. We have no right to militarily intervene in other nations. Um, uh, yeah, I mean, I don't think we should be militarily intervening when other nations are doing things that we don't want them to do. Even something like North Korea, I think it's a better strategy to just, invite them to the table and make, gestures of goodwill to them because that'll ease a lot of tensions. And I think a part of why North Korea is so repressive is because it has to kind of lock itself down into defensive mode because everyone else is trying to get them. So, yeah, I don't think it's a good idea to go around militarily intervening in other nations. And so I would agree. Representatives rarely represent the nation well. Um, I agree. I strongly agree with that. I don't like representative democracy. A military option should always be considered. Uh, I mean, all options should be considered. So I partially agree with that. My religious values should be spread as much as possible. Okay, so this is the first question where I'm having a bit of trouble with the wording because it's sort of like, when did you stop beating your wife? Um, do I have religious values in the first place for them to be spread as much as possible? So that's kind of a poorly worded sentence. But I'm assuming what this is asking is if I am religious and if then I think that those values should be spread as much as possible. And so I would strongly disagree with that. A better world will come from automation, science, and technology. A better world, I would partially agree with that. I think that there are challenges that can be overcome with automation, science, and technology, and there are also challenges that'll be created by it. Immigrants are a net positive. I mean, immigration is a big I don't know question for me generally. Um, are they a net positive? I don't know. I don't really know. The quality of life is generally going up decade by decade. Strongly agree. I only buy products that are made in my country. No. Strongly disagree. Elections are a waste of resources. Waste of resources? That's a weird way to put it. No, they're not a waste of resources. I mean, they're a fundamental part of how the system works. So, strongly disagree. A country must be sure to take all measures to enforce its laws. Uh, huh. Is an interesting question. Take all measures to enforce its laws. Um, I would partially agree with that. I don't know. I think some measures might be going a little overboard, but I generally think that if a country has laws, it should enforce those laws. In order for humanity to survive, we must get past having separate nations. Um, See, I don't know if this is necessary. I know a lot of people are big into this idea of no borders, like the Amazing Atheist and Paul Zigo are big into this idea. I don't really know that it's necessary, though. So I would I would partially disagree. A constant state of war benefits a country. No. Sometimes wars can benefit a country, but a constant state of war never benefited nobody. You would have to be crazy to think this. Strongly disagree. Classes should not exist. What, like college classes? No. Probably talking about economic classes or other forms of social class. Um, Classes should not exist. I would partially agree with that because like some classes should not exist, but I don't really know exactly what's meant by class. Border protection is important. Um, how important is it to protect your borders? I know a lot of right wing people seem to think it's like a matter of extreme importance in national security. And a lot of them make these weird arguments about like the importation of drugs across borders being a big deal. But like, is it that important? Is border protection really important? I don't know, and I would partially disagree just because like I think people kind of overreact. I support the BLM movement. Um, what, the Black Lives Matter movement? Do I support that? Um, yeah, I guess. I mean, they are kind of SJWs, and I don't like that. But I also really don't like police brutality. So, yeah, I would agree. The hourly minimum wage should be 15 USD or more. So, this is an American thing. So, this is like, yeah, mostly targeted for Americans. Should the minimum wage be 15 USD or more? I mean, a lot of places are offering more than 15 USD for some pretty basic jobs these days. Um, Minimum wage is something that I've never been quite sure is necessary, but cuz like there is a lot of competition for wages and businesses do tend to like to be competitive. But I do think it's important to increase buying power in order to increase quality of life and circulate more money. There are a lot of people who complain about minimum wage being too high because they can't afford to pay people. And that always makes me kind of wonder like, if you can't afford to pay people, then like, is that a problem with minimum wage, or is that a problem with your business? I kind of put the blame elsewhere mentally on that, but I don't know if that's the correct approach. I'll say agree. Sounds pretty good to me. People should have the right to leave their wealth to their descendants. Um, I would say partially agree. I think I kind of like having the steep inheritance tax because it kind of gets the blood flowing again. It keeps you from getting these really like entrenched wealthy families. You know, like if you want money, you got to work for your money, I think. So I would partially agree. I think we should have inheritance. I don't think it should be like removed. But I do kind of like the idea of, you know, giving back a bit. When you die, you know, your body dies and your money dies with you partly. I think that's fair. Technology is making people lose jobs, which is ultimately harmful for humanity. Um, Ultimately harmful? I don't know about that. Is it harmful? Yeah. I would partially agree because I don't think it's ultimately harmful. I support regional unions such as the European Union. Um, I don't know what the benefits of that really are and what the downsides are. So, I'm unsure. My country spends too much money on the military. Um, so this is about the USA, I guess. Yeah, well, the thing is, the USA, it like buys, it creates all these weapons that it hardly ever uses, and then they just kind of sit in these storage hangars forever, and then go bad, and then they have to get replaced. And there's all these contracts that these companies have, and these companies are friends with the politicians who are in charge, and so the politicians give these favorable contracts to these people to make these weapons and missiles and stuff that we don't actually need. So I think we get a little bit excessive with military spending. I would probably agree with that. Every person has unalienable rights, including the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I disagree. I don't believe in unalienable rights or metaphysical properties of rights. I think rights are a very pragmatic phenomenon decided by human beings, that they can be bestowed or taken away. Export subsidies should be used for protecting local industries. Export subsidies should be used for protecting local industries. I don't even know what an export subsidy is. Is it like the government gives you money to export your product? I don't really understand that, so I'm going to say neutral. I don't know. Private property should be abolished. I would partially agree with that. I think we have too much private property right now. Humanity has passed the point in which war is needed for resources. No. I think it's going to get a lot worse because we have an oncoming water shortage. So I would disagree with that. economic globalism caused more negative impacts than positive ones. Um, I would disagree, if for no other reason than I think it helped and is helping third world countries kind of culturally advance. But obviously, they still have a lot of problems. So I would disagree. Laws should vary from area to area and culture to culture within a country. Um, this is something I've wondered about. I actually kind of posted a little defense of the idea of states' rights on the Deep Fat Fried subreddit because they were against states' rights. And I was kind of like, I mean, is that really the right idea to be against states' rights? Because, I remember Graham Hancock really praising states' rights for the way cannabis has been legalized in most states in the country at this point. And that's one good thing that states' rights have done. Um, I also think that you can get things done like the rank choice vote. That's easier to get done on a state level. Um, I think if states managed their finances better and had better financial security, they could handle things like healthcare on a state level and try things out in those reasons. And sometimes they do. So I think that there's some devolution of power can be useful for trying things out, for getting the ball rolling on certain reforms. The people over at Deep Fat Fried seem to ignore all of that, and they just seem to look at, oh, yeah, states' rights are only beneficial to the right because then they can take away your rights with states' rights to take away individual rights. I mean, there might be a need for some more constitutional amendments on a federal level. I would agree with that. I don't think they're going to happen, though. Uh, so, like, they're kind of a mixed bag, really, the whole devolution of power. But I would partially agree because I think the benefits are there, and as long as there are benefits, then I think we should kind of work on turning that into something good. Only extremely talented immigrants, if that, should be permitted to enter the country. Um, no. I think if you're going to invite immigrants, I don't know. Because, like, there's a lot of people who just need opportunities and they don't have them. And then they come over to a wealthier country and then they just get to work and they start doing good work and getting the opportunities that they wanted at home and didn't have. But I can see the logic in not wanting to just let anyone in. Because a lot of people are very protective of the sort of the people who are already in the country, and they don't want them to be out competed by people who are demanding much lower wages. So I'm kind of unsure on this. I'm going to say unsure. A group of states without a strong national government is merely an alliance, not a nation. I don't really care. Religion should be banned. Strongly disagree. It is better to maintain a balanced budget than to ensure welfare for all citizens. Um, Sometimes, I mean, if you go into a little bit of debt, that's okay. So I don't think you need to have an entirely balanced budget. But I do think that it's important to be realistic about how much money we're spending and to not just keep increasing the debt just because we have priorities. I think our priority should be keeping our currency strong, and not that our currency is the same as other currencies. Like, we have a fiat currency that a lot of the other currencies in the world are based on. And so that puts us in a totally different situation from those other countries. And we have different considerations for managing our debt and our deficit. But do I know the details of that? No. So I would generally say agree or partially agree. I'm going to partially agree because I'm kind of unsure. But I do think that it's important to be fiscally responsible. Sex before marriage is immoral. Marriage is immoral. Strongly disagree. A nation usually needs a military in order to survive. Yeah, strongly agree. It is necessary for the government to intervene in the economy to protect consumers. Strongly agree. The government must intervene in the foreign exchange market to higher import prices. I think that's misworded. But so I guess it's saying to protect home industry with tariffs. Is that what it's saying? I don't really know what this is saying. I'm going to say unsure. People's freedom should have no limits. Strongly disagree. Technological progress is usually good. Yeah, agree. State laws should have precedence over national laws. Well, no, because the national, like that should be a higher power. The federal government should be a higher power than the state government. That being said, cannabis is still federally illegal, and yet they've done nothing to enforce that other than the occasional DEA raid of a California dispensary. Always picking on the Californians for some reason. State laws should have precedence over national laws. No, I don't see any way in which this makes sense. Like, obviously, I like that they don't enforce the federal cannabis law, but I don't think it makes sense for them not to enforce it. So I disagree. Marijuana should be legal. Strongly agree. Public opinion swings too much with emotional events to be useful for policymaking. Yes! Finally, someone said it. Only those who have served in the military should be able to gain power in government. So this is recommending, what's it called? Stratocracy or something like that. It's a government by soldiers. This is like this is almost like in Starship Troopers, where you have to join the military to be a citizen. Um, I would say disagree, because I don't think that there's a point to that. We should continue developing AI even if that means we're going to be replaced. I agree. Children should be educated in religious values. No. Strongly disagree. Faith is complete nonsense. No, it's not. There is like an actual purpose for faith in society, in psychology. Like, there are psychological effects. There are physiological effects, actually, of your psychology. And so if you have some kind of assurance and feeling of security in life, that can actually help you have a better physical body, and also it can just help with a lot of things in life, getting through the problems in life. So there's definitely a use for faith. So I would partially disagree. Services like roads should be publicly owned. Yeah. Definitely roads. Strongly agree with that. All societies are a blend of cultures. Strongly agree. My nation is better than all other nations. No. I'm not going to go strongly disagree, because I do think it's one of the best nations there is. But I will disagree. There are many issues that it does not make sense to address at a local level. Yeah, I guess. I don't know which ones they would be, but yeah, it makes sense that there would be some issues that are better addressed at a local level and others better addressed at a national level. So, I would agree. Local governments can understand their citizens better than the national government could. I mean, yeah, agree. We must preserve our culture. I think it's a good idea to preserve our culture, but I do think that it's important to realize that nothing is permanent and change is just a fact of life, and it's always been that way. So when we talk about preserving culture, I think for a lot of people that is kind of a paranoid, reactionary conservatism where they have to keep everything from changing. But that's not really what I take from it. I think preserving our culture involves preserving the inheritance that we have from our past, remembering our past, learning all the lessons of our past, and keeping alive the various artifacts of our past that can inspire people of today and people of the future. But that being said, nothing lasts forever. So everything's going to be destroyed at one point or another. But I think it's a good idea to hold on to things and treasure them while they last. So I would agree. Patents should be protected to prevent other countries from outcompeting my country. What? Patents should be protected to prevent other countries from outcompeting my country. What does it mean to protect a patent on an international level? Like, how do you even do that? I don't understand the question. War is never justified. No, sometimes it's justified. It's justified whether you think it's just or not. Someone's come up with a justification for it. Um, but yeah, sometimes you gotta slap people around. I would disagree. It is very important to maintain law and order. Um, yeah, I would agree. In fact, I would strongly agree. Gender is a social construct. I would partially agree with that. A country cannot function without a national government. Um, I mean, every country has a national government, so it's not like we have any example of a country that doesn't have a national government to look at. Um, the closest we have are confederacies like Switzerland, but that seems to work. But they have a national government. It's just uh, everything has to be run with the consent of all 15 cantons. I think it's 15. And so it doesn't function the way a federal government functions. So, but they have a national government. I think a country without a national government is just a bunch of other countries, a bunch of little countries. So I'm going to say neutral or unsure just because I don't think that this question really means anything. Because it's kind of down to semantics in a way. Democracy makes it too easy for a majority to further itself at the expense of minorities. I think you can see that with what I was talking about with the states' rights thing. How the right wing states in America will use states' rights to infringe on people's liberties. So, yeah, I guess I would agree with this because it does make it too easy for the majority to further itself at the expense of minorities, right? If you have nothing to hide, then you have nothing to fear. I guess it makes sense, doesn't it? I mean, sometimes you just get caught in the wrong place at the wrong time, and there's a misunderstanding, and you get in trouble. I guess I would partially agree with this. Only our national language should be spoken in our country. This is one of the dumbest opinions ever, and I'm sad to say that there are idiots who actually believe this. And you wonder why I am not a believer in democracy. Equality of outcome is important. No, I disagree. Taxation is theft. No. I mean, it's semantical, isn't it? Like, of course it's theft, but, does that matter? Like, I don't like the way this question is phrased, because I agree that taxation is theft, but I don't agree that that makes it wrong. So I'm going to say, I think what they want me to answer is whether I think taxation is bad. And so I would strongly disagree with that. The government must be by the people, for the people. Well, I mean, it's always going to be by the people because people are the only people who actually exist. So it's always going to be by the people, but which people it is, that's that's another question. It should always be for the people. I agree with that. By the people, not entirely. I'll partially agree with this. It is more important to retain peaceful relations than to further our strength. I would agree. Economic planning ensures maximum prosperity and growth. Yeah, but sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you just fuck up and destroy the whole economy with your bad planning. So, like, I don't know. Unsure. People should have to work for anything they get. I mean, not anything they get. I would partially disagree with this, but I do think generally that if you get something, you should work for it. Generally. But, we also have to give a little. Modern technology and the modern lifestyle made life meaningless and dull. I think there was kind of always that aspect of life. I think life kind of always had a side of it that was meaningless and dull. But definitely modern technology has accelerated the way we think about that. So I would agree. People should hold more loyalty to their local state than their country. No, I think if we are a body that is supposed to be united, we need to think in a united way and not in a divided way, and we shouldn't just be thinking about the interests of our own state. Like, for instance, I've been reading a lot about Nevada history lately, and Nevada had, a lot of issues with in the late 1800s the national monetary policy, because Nevada made so much money on selling silver to the government. And then when this one lawmaker took silver out of the gold standard, it really upset a lot of people in Nevada. And so the whole state kind of coagulated around this silver movement, which kind of allied itself with any party it could. And at a certain point, it was the progressives. But that is an example of a state being really all about its own interests. Just give me what I want. And I'm not saying they were wrong to support silver. And in fact, I think it might have been a dick move for that guy to take silver out of the gold standard. But I do think that that is a way of thinking that I don't like about the American system. So I would disagree with this. Laws should be completely consistent within all regions of a nation. This is kind of similar to a previous question. I don't know. Again, I'm kind of unsure about this. I like the idea of this kind of unitary, just make everything make sense across the board. But I also like the idea of having a bit of experimentation. So I'd partially disagree. Nations should cooperate whenever it benefits them both. I mean, can't go wrong there. Strongly agree. In the modern era, militaries aren't really necessary. My friend, Statues of certain people should be taken down. Certain people. I'm not in favor of taking down statues. Just leave them up. Who gives a shit? Disagree. High tariffs are needed to protect local industries. Yeah, this is an interesting question. I don't know the answer to this. Some people are really big on the free trade thing. Bosch is big on free trade. I think that guy, No Fuckers on YouTube, NFKRZ, the Russian guy, he seems to be a free trade guy. So it has its supporters. Bernie Sanders was not a free trade guy. He was all about the tariffs. I have more of a protectionist edge to my thinking than a free trade edge, I guess. I know Cameron Riley was a protectionist, and he's someone whose opinion I respect quite a bit. So I mean, there's respectable people on both sides of this issue, is what I'm saying, and I don't really know who to side with, but I'm going to say partially agree just because it fits more with my personal sentiment about the issue. Direct democracy is the best form of government. It's not the best, probably, but I think it's better than representative democracy. So I guess, partially disagree because I don't think it's the best, but I do think it's a better form than what we have. Democracy is more than a decision-making process. So this is kind of adding a kind of a metaphysical level to the idea of democracy. I can understand people feeling that way about it, but I just don't. I don't have those kind of ideas. I don't have that love of democracy, so I'll disagree. Transhumanism isn't as radical as many people think it is. Yeah, I agree. Local products are often poor in quality. I mean, not in America. I think we tend to have pretty good craftsmen here, as far as I know. In fact, the products that usually suck are the ones we import from China and Indonesia. So no, I would disagree. It doesn't seem like that's true. The threat of machines taking over humanity is very real. No, I don't think so. It doesn't seem like that to me. Laws should not be based on religion. Strongly agree. Technical and scientific knowledge should be protected from other countries. Protected from other countries? No. Strongly disagree. Technology must be slowed down to protect the environment. Okay. Is it the technology that's the problem, or is it the lack of technology? Think about that one. I would disagree. I think that maybe we should focus on degrowth solutions to help the environment. And so that might look like slowing down technology. I don't see it as slowing down technology. I see it as what's the word? Optimizing technology. in a sustainable way. So I would disagree, but not strongly disagree. Those who disagree with the government should be removed from the country. That's a really horrible way of thinking. I strongly disagree with that. The benefits of open borders would outweigh the costs. I don't know. A united world government would be beneficial to mankind. I can see that. I think if we ever get to the point where we have a united world government, things will be so different than they are today that the practical concerns we have about the feasibility of that today won't be as much of a concern if this does happen. Certainly, we won't get international conflicts, and everything will be domestic rather than having international relations. So that makes things easier when you're talking about trade and stuff. So I would agree. Yeah, it does seem like there would be some significant advantages to this. There is no need for local or state governments. Of course you need local governments. I mean, we can talk about laws and having local laws, but you need people to manage things on the ground level. So I strongly disagree. Each person should have one vote, each equal to every other. Seems like a pretty good idea overall. Yeah, I agree. Democracy is inefficient and slow. Strongly agree with that. Police need more power and protection. No, I think they need a lot less protection. Man, they're too protected as it is. And they have too much power as it is. Like, they get away with so much, and a lot of it is breaches of power and unconstitutional actions. So they're taking power that they don't even legally have a lot of the time. So strongly disagree with this. People should think of themselves as citizens of their nation rather than their state. Well, in fascism, the nation and the state are the same thing, so this question doesn't even make sense in that worldview. But from a more, less goofy, radical worldview, I don't think it matters. I don't think the distinction here really matters. So I guess I would say disagree, because I disagree that... See, this sort of either or kind of question, we got a lot of that in the political compass test. I didn't like that, because it's difficult to know when you say disagree what you're disagreeing to. But since I disagree with the premise as it's laid out, I'll just say I disagree. Income taxes for the middle and lower classes should be lowered. I don't know. The internet should be banned. What the fuck are you talking about? I believe there is something after death. No, I don't believe it. Subdivisions should not be able to exempt from national laws. By subdivisions, are we talking about devolved governments? I strongly agree with this, even though that would mean that cannabis would be illegal in my state. Nations fighting among each other gets in the way of progress. Um, yeah, strongly agree. I just had to think about. Do you ever read something and it doesn't register and you have to look over it again to get it? Yeah. Trade is often beneficial to both parties. I mean, obviously, otherwise they wouldn't do it. Regulations on industries rather, on industries, industries. Regulations on industries must be implemented to protect the environment. 100%. Sharia law isn't as bad as people think it is. Seems pretty bad to me. Gonna disagree on that. I prefer a planned economy over a free and open economy. No, I would disagree. Fully privatized healthcare is a better means of providing healthcare than single payer systems. I don't think fully privatized healthcare is ever a good idea. But better than single payer systems? Uh, no. I would say no. But perhaps single payer isn't the best way either. But I would disagree. I would rather have single payer than private. Private charities are a better means of helping the poor than public welfare is. Well, I don't know. Depends on how good they are and how efficient they are and how much they cover. So, I don't know. Neutral. Autocracy is the best way to rule a nation. No. No. All products should be made in my country. I mean, no, I don't think so. I think you can import stuff like. There's only one place that coffee grows in the United States. Should we be getting all of our coffee from Hawaii? I don't know if Hawaii is big enough to support the coffee demands of the entire country. But that being said, if it is, then I think it would be good to support home industry, you know? So I think it's a good idea to buy local, but it doesn't mean that all products should be made in my country. So I partially agree with this. Humanity. There's a lot of typos in this. Humanity has progressed beyond the need for religion. I would partially agree. Popular opinion is not always right. Strongly agree. Foreigners should never enter the country. Strongly disagree. It's a good idea to test a policy in one state rather than implementing it nationwide right away. This is kind of what we were talking about earlier. I kind of like that idea. I'm going to partially agree. We should not allow any refugees. I mean, I think we should allow refugees, but we should also be mindful of the way that impacts our diplomatic relationships. But I disagree. Most, if not all, corporations are inherently evil. I disagree. Any deals other countries want must be bad for us. This is a pretty dumb question. This is like A lot of these are written in a really dumb way, I gotta say. Um, any deals other countries want must be bad for us. Disagree. The right to bear arms should not be infringed. Um, I would disagree because I think there's some people who shouldn't be bearing arms. Some freedom must be given up in order to keep people safe. Strongly agree. Subdivisions of nations should have their own militaries. Seems like a really bad fucking idea. Strongly disagree. Victimless crimes, such as drug use, should not be crimes at all. Strongly agree. People should not have protections that could hinder discovering their criminal activity. No, I disagree with that. Like, I don't think everything needs to be sacrificed for safety and security. I think sometimes people care a little bit too much about safety and security in general, and maybe they should think a little bit more about what they're losing when they think about that stuff. Like, for instance, freedom of speech. You know, a lot of people are not fans of freedom of speech or freedom of expression, and they don't get the point of it because they're afraid. Oh, what if these ideas get in the culture and then they cause hate crimes? And I kind of feel like, well, if that happens, then that's unfortunate, but I'm not willing to sacrifice, you know, the intellectual process just to make people a little bit safer. Countries that violate human rights should be toppled. Strongly disagree. I think, well, I don't know if I want to strongly disagree with that. I'll disagree. I think that we need to be a lot less hostile to countries that we don't like, because I think the hostility does nothing. Like with North Korea, especially with relationships like that, if you're not going to go to war, then don't act like you're going to go to war. Don't pretend that you're enemies if you're not willing to just like put yourself on the line and fight, because you're wasting your fucking time. You're causing misery for the people you're sanctioning with economics. You're just making the problems worse by doing that. So, yeah, I disagree with this. Without tariffs, my country's economy will likely fail. I mean, do we even have tariffs in this country? I guess we do. We have free trade agreements with a lot of countries, but I guess that means we must have tariffs with other countries. I hardly hear about tariffs anymore. Tariffs were like the big talk of the 19th century political discussions, because back then the parties weren't really all that different from each other, and so like tariffs was the big deal. But yeah, I don't really hear about them very much anymore. But I don't know. I'm kind of agnostic on the whole trade thing. Let's see. We're almost halfway through. Once we get to halfway through, I'm going to take a break, and then I'll come back and do the rest of it. We should respect those who have served in our military. I mean, we should respect a lot of people. I guess agree. I don't see any reason not to respect them. Government should be accountable to the international community. This is an interesting question. If there should be, international law and an international community that can hold countries accountable. But in what way? Like through sanctions? Because I don't agree with that. So, like, in what way are they actually going to be held accountable? If a country is a sovereign power, there's not much you can do to it, other than use military force to invade. But I kind of feel like that just feels like the wrong approach, because that feels dangerously like we're creating a cabal of mutually aligned interests that can just bully other countries into doing exactly what they want with their military power. So, like, that could be used for bad ends. Like, it could be used to stamp out any left wing government in the world. So, yeah, I'm not sure I agree with this. I'm going to say partially disagree. Society has become too progressive. No. I think, no. I'm all about progress. Strongly disagree. Foreign products should be banned or heavily restricted from entry. Uh, this is very similar to that previous question about how all products should be bought locally. I would disagree with this. There is no need for a national government. Haven't we already had this question before? Um, I guess this one has no. There's no talk of state governments in here. So, is this just saying there's no need for a government? Period. Because I would disagree with that. Having independent nations with the risk of global conflict creates a large threat to humanity as a whole. I agree. Religion must decline for society to progress. Strongly agree. If AI could rule more effectively than humans, then AI should rule. Well, if it could, I don't think it could, but yeah, sure. If we accept immigrants, or if we accept migrants at all, it is important that they assimilate into our culture. I think it's kind of important. I'll partially agree with that, but I also think that they don't need to assimilate altogether. They just need to assimilate enough that they can, get along with other people. In general, immigrants are bad for the country. Um, I, in general, are they like there might be some like side effects of immigration that are not so good, but are they just bad in general? It doesn't seem like a very compassionate way to think. I'll partially disagree with that. Local governments give each region good representation of their views. I mean, they do. I mean, that's just like a fact. Yeah. Excessive government intervention is a threat to the economy. I mean, sure, excessive intervention is. I mean, putting the word excessive in there kind of. That's what it means, right? It goes to excess. You don't need it. But is it a threat? I guess that's a legitimate question to ask. Um, I mean, it's got to be, right? Cuz like there's only so much you can manipulate people. They're going to want to do what they want to do, and if you try to micromanage everything, you're going to run into a lot of problems. So, I would agree. Nations should not maintain a military. Disagree. There should not be international law. I partially agree with this just because, like, how are you going to enforce international law? Any method of enforcing international law just seems like something I'm not going to agree with. We must actively promote foreign products. Promote foreign products? Why? If we continue human technological progress, humanity is doomed. I mean, I think we're doomed either way. I mean, there's no turning back now, so I guess I would partially disagree because I think we're doomed, but not because of continuing technological progress. I think we've already doomed ourselves. I enjoy some foreign cultures, strongly agree. We should be taking in more refugees. More refugees? Where are the refugees coming from now? Are they still coming from, like, the Middle East, like Syria and Iraq? Are we still getting a lot of those guys? I know a lot of those guys are going to Europe for a while. I don't know if a lot of them were coming over here. But this is a question of immigration, and I don't know the consequences of having large numbers of refugees enter a country. Most, if not all, businesses must be owned by the government. No, it doesn't seem very necessary to me. Disagree. There is no higher power. I would agree with that. And catering to popular opinion is detrimental to a nation. Yeah. I mean, if the popular opinion is wrong, sure. If it's right, then it's not detrimental. So it depends on the context. It depends on what we're talking about. So I guess I'll partially agree with this. But anyway, we're halfway through. Let me see. The recording is at 1 hour and 17 minutes, 18 minutes. So I guess I'll stop this for now. I'll put this up today as my video for today, and then I'll finish this in a little bit. I'll finish it today and then put that one up tomorrow. So I got 2 vlogs worked out. And then I guess for the 30th, I got to review my newspaper that I showed you at the beginning of the month, just because I said I would. So, yeah, I guess I got my vlogs for the rest of VEDN worked out. But this is VEDN Day 28. I'll see you tomorrow for VEDN Day 29.